to thank all of you for coming. As many of you were notified on your way in, this is not an official City of Houston meeting by any means. This is just a group of local homeowners who have concerns in their neighborhood, who have wanted to bring people together to give you an opportunity to learn a little more and have some questions answered. Many of you have your minds made up already. That's certainly your prerogative, and many of you are undecided and want some additional information, and that's what we're here for tonight.
There you
Okay.
go.
Sorry, I am not a public speaker. This is not what I do for a living, but my name is Bill Baldwin, and I'm here with Kathleen Powell and Mary Walseth, and I work together to coordinate these efforts on behalf of Responsible Historic Preservation. And I want to be clear, our primary objective is the education of homeowners about the Historic Preservation Ordinance and historic preservation in general, the self-determination of each neighborhood. We have always promoted self-determination. We are not anti-preservation. We are not anti-preservation ordinance. I think you will see when you leave here tonight, we believe there are many areas that are very supportive of the ordinance and what it says, and we feel like those people are entitled to that protection that they so deserve. But we believe firmly that the decision should be made at the homeowner level, and we have always promoted 75% or more homeowner support prior to implementation. We were not successful. That has always been what we have promoted. We would continue to say that again today. That's not what we're faced with. But we feel like when there are restrictions such as these placed on homeowners, the Texas Property Code is clear, and it should be a mandate of 75% of both the homeowners and the tract owners that are impacted prior to implementation. We were not that successful with this ordinance. Education, self-determination, and due process. That is what we promote, and that is what we're going to continue to support. If you walk out of here 100% supportive of the preservation ordinance, that is your right, and we believe firmly in your right to have that opinion. And there will be some here today that may not have the same opinion, and that's all right also. The ability to disagree and still be neighbors is an acceptable form. We should not be made to feel bad if we do not support this ordinance. That they have wanted to shoot the messenger versus the message. But I want to thank our host today, Mr. Dan Fuller with First Baptist Church Heights, who's graciously on his behalf opened up this venue for our discussion this evening. And if you give him a round of applause.
I just want to welcome each and every one of you guys. You're my neighbor. I've lived in the Heights for over 30 years, just a couple of streets down. And so you are my neighbors. If anybody asks, one of the benefits of going to this church is that each individual member can use the facilities from time to time. You're here as my guest. Okay, this is not necessarily a First Baptist church function. You're here as my guest. So if anybody wants to complain to the church, just give them my name. I'll be happy to talk to them. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're my neighbor. And if you don't know somebody, turn around and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. Let me give you our overview for the evening. We're going to give you an update on the ordinance and what it says and the impact on your individual properties and neighborhoods. Then we're going to outline our vision for how to use the ordinance to repeal it if you are not in favor of the ordinance. There's a mechanism in place granted by the City Council, adopted by them, that allows for neighborhoods to opt out of the provision. We're not trying to promote anarchy, but where there is not clear understanding or overwhelming support, there's an opportunity for us to retract, and we're going to explain to you our vision on how that works. We will take questions and answers and comments after we've thoroughly explained all of that, and then we're going to break into groups of individuals that would like to work on the repeal of the ordinance for their neighborhood. So we'll break in at the end into individual groups for Norhill Heights, Woodland Heights, Heights East, Heights South, Heights West, or whatever. If you are here for information and gain the information that you want and want to leave after that, I certainly appreciate you coming in the first place altogether. The preservation ordinance, I want to be clear, I mean, there is an objective. There is a mission of the city, whether you disagree or agree, to preserve the structures in historic neighborhoods. Their overwhelming criteria is to save the original portions of the structures that were built at the time which made the neighborhood. So that is the overwhelming philosophy of everything that they believe in the ordinance. So when you deal with the interpretation of the ordinance, you must remember their mindset is to protect and preserve that structure. It's not to tear it down. It's not to alter it. It is to preserve and to protect that structure for the benefit of the city and the neighborhood. And it's to protect you and your investment from something happening adversely to your right or your left or across the street. That is the mindset. And I get what their ordinance is trying to do. I understand it thoroughly. I understand its application very thoroughly. You may agree or disagree with it, but I just want to be clear what it is that it does. On last Wednesday, October 3rd, the city finally adopted the new preservation ordinance. They have tried to get the ordinance up, and they have a portion of a link that's up today, and it's a 32-page document explaining their 38-page document. It will take them a little more time to get the total ordinance in one phase where it's available for your review. But I have copies of it here, and we will provide summaries later. But it basically, there are three portions that we need to discuss. One was the creation of a district, and they have made it more difficult to become a district. They've removed the petition process for the most part. It takes 10% of a neighborhood to come together, make an application. Then they produce their meetings and their mail-outs, and it requires 67% of the homeowners to return the ballot in favor of a district. And we applaud their effort to do that. It is going to be more difficult to create historic districts than it has in the past, and it is going to be less contentious than it was in the past. And I applaud them for that effort. I think the intent is to recognize very large districts, such as ours, are very difficult. Where there are small 19 houses like Portland Place, that ordinance works fine. Free land where there's 21 houses, it tends to work fine. Broad acres where there's 16 houses, it tends to work fine. Where they get into difficulty is into these larger districts where there are 800 and 900 houses. And the new ordinance limits the size to 400, and they make a few exceptions beyond that. But you'll see smaller districts in the future, and I think it'll be more difficult to create a district. The next has to do with the main message of the ordinance. And of course, the main message of the ordinance is no means no with regards to demolitions first. They do not want to lose any more what they consider to be historic structures. Overwhelmingly, the emphasis is on no more demolition of those structures. So we can argue it all you want, but they do not want to demolish any structures that are of any historic or significant value. There's always an exception to these deals. If it is beyond use, there are exceptions. If there's an extreme economic disadvantage, there is an exception. There's an exception for every rule, but overwhelmingly, they do not want to demolish any houses. They want even non-contributing structures are mandated by the new preservation ordinance. If you don't alter your structure, you don't alter the new house, or you don't alter the house you live in significantly, this ordinance does not have an adverse impact on your property. It might on your neighborhood, but it doesn't impact your property. They're not overly getting involved with your home. It does not dictate the paint color, the mailbox, any of those sort of, if you change your door, all those sort of things are important. I don't want to get caught up into the minutia. But if your structure, if you modify the opening or a size of an opening, or you modify the size of your structure, you're going to require a certificate of appropriateness. And in most instances, their intention is not to modify the original structure. They want to keep the original structure the way it was and force you to make your modifications to the rear of the structure. Overwhelmingly, that's their objective. So it definitely impacts you if you wish to remodel the exterior of your structure. But be clear, you can change a door, you can change out a window, you can do a number of things. You just can't move the door. You can't move the windows. You can't enlarge the windows without going through a vast process that probably would be denied. And then certainly it's the limiting of new construction. It is their intention to limit the size, scale, and scope of new construction to the period which we have the contributing structures. You cannot use as a basis any non-contributing structure that means anything newer than 50 years of age. So if you build on a vacant lot on Heights Boulevard, you must ignore all the new construction or any non-compatible structures and only go with what's in the contributing structures within that district. So then on the maintenance, they do not, let's be clear, they don't, you can maintain, you can replace your rotten wood with new wood, you can, it doesn't dictate maintenance of your structure. It's really the altering of your contributing structure that's the biggest issue, or the demolition of your building. I mean, those are the main things, and there are 38 pages that we can answer specific questions that you have. But if you get to, and we have we're going to show you some examples of some things here in just one moment. I get the ordinance stops Walmart from building in the middle of the neighborhood. I got it. Walmart was probably not coming into the middle of the neighborhood, but it does stop that. It stops 4-story townhouses, it stops Ashby high-rise, it does do all of those things, I agree. But in my opinion, it goes vastly beyond that, and it becomes too restrictive of the typical type of structures in our neighborhood. We have just a few little examples that I wanted to go over with you here. Start this little slide. Y'all ready? This is a structure in a historic district, and we all agree right here that this is a perfectly valid historic structure that probably should be preserved for eternity, and we're supportive of that. No problem understanding this house here. Go to the next one. Here's an example of a duplex that was in North Hill. This house is on the corner of Temple and Neshaw, I believe. Go to the next slide. Here's the problem that I have with their ordinance. This is my personal problem. I tried to get rid of the window to the right and move it where it was adjacent to the other two windows. Just trying to slide that over there. That was the door to the other side of the duplex that was there. The ordinance does not allow for me to move that window and move it beside the other two windows, creating 3 windows in a row that are all throughout the historic North Hill district, because someone might want to buy that duplex for $599,000 and convert it back to the duplex where it was in 1907. That's the reigning mindset of this ordinance. And so I was denied and had to wait my 90 days. I submitted tapered columns for this structure. There are 7 tapered columns on the 800 block of West Temple. 3 months in a row, I was denied tapered columns because they felt this round column, which I feel like looks like Home Depot, was more appropriate than the tapered column. This is the type of stuff that makes people madder than hell. I'm not talking about a mega mansion. I'm not talking about a stucco house. I'm talking about a duplex conversion in the historic North Hill district that I felt I wanted these 2 changes. Slide that window over, have tapered columns. Denied 3 times. And no means no in the future where I would be forced to do it. And we just yielded on the window. I didn't have any more time. I just yielded and left the window. That's now the living room here, the dining room to the right. It has a 2-foot gap and another window in it. Next slide. This is 1822 Cortland. Perfect example of a little bungalow we were trying to remodel. Next slide. They approved the addition to the back. They approved the garage here that's a front-loading garage, which is at the back of the house. I wanted to take this house